Greetings, fellow channeling enthusiasts and or the idly curious or whoever else happens to be watching my infrequently recurring show. I just thought I'd drop in and let everybody know what was going on in my life and assure everyone that no, I haven't fallen off the face of the earth or been abducted by aliens, at least I remember, or anything like that. What's been occupying my time lately has been this thing. And I know I've talked about this a couple times before. The opening to channel book by, get a little closer, Sanaya, Roman, and Duane Packer. There we go. But anyway, so yeah, this book has turned out to be fantastic. I mean, for those of you that haven't seen my previous videos on it, I heard about it. So somebody like had a link to this DVD that told about like 6 different channels or something like that, and like the portions of the DVD, it was split up and posted online. And so I watched all those, and one of the guys said that he had learned how to channel from this book, and I thought that was really interesting, and so that led me to that opening to channel book. And also a couple of the other ones said that they had taken classes or something. And they may have been some of the classes actually taught by the authors, because Sanaya, Roman, and Duane Packer also, for many years, have taught or kind of led a seminar or a course, or however you want to look at it, on developing the ability to channel, and supposedly have led, I think, like thousands of people to the ability to do this. And anymore, they just have that book, and they have like a DVD, or it'd be like a CD, audio CD series with some accompanying booklets or something. They have a lot of stuff like that. But they have a series on the channeling thing as well, which I haven't gotten that. I assume it'd be great to have the guided meditations that walk you through a lot of the visualizations and stuff, but the book alone was enough for me to get started channeling. And yes, I indeed have started the conscious trance type of channeling, which is what the book is about. This is not deep trance channeling. This is not Edgar Cayce style or anything like that, or Douglas Cottrell or anything. This is the you know, more the surface type. And I don't like lose consciousness or anything. It's not even like Daryl Anka with Bashar or anything like that. It's just more like your, I guess I'd say, run-of-the-mill conscious channels. I guess like Matthew Lewin style or something like that. And I haven't posted any of that stuff online yet, even though I've been going for like maybe 3 weeks now, or 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm just going to give it some time until I get a little bit more ingrained in the process. It's not that I doubt the validity of the stuff that's coming through, because even the very first reading that came through back on like January 28th or whenever it was, even that was... It seemed crystal clear, dead on. I had no problems. It came straight through and everything. So it's just that it's kind of like a self-imposed restriction or whatever. I just would like to give myself a good year or 6 months, or you know, a fair amount of time to get really really polished at the process. I guess maybe that's the right word, before I start posting stuff online. And then I may start going back and into the archives, so to speak, and posting like my first channeling session and some of the other earlier stuff And rest assured, I've got it all on like audio recordings at least. I did video the first couple, but I was just like in the dark with my candles, so you couldn't really see anything in the video. So I was like, oh, heck with it. So I've just been recording audio, and it's pretty crappy audio at that because I've got like my heater and my fan running all the time because it's like butt cold in this basement at 5 in the morning when I do this. But you know, all those issues will be worked out in time. Rest assured, and no, I don't require like special conditions to do the channeling. At least I don't think so. The whole idea is you're supposed to be able to do it just about anywhere. But so yeah, when I really start doing channeled material for YouTube, I will I'll make sure I have decent audio and video quality and everything. But I don't know. It's good news. It's really good news. It's just incredible to me how systematic the book is and their approach is, and it's not just on the channeling thing. I mean, it's just amazing. You get into the Orin and DaBen website by Sanaya, Roman, Duane, Packer, and it's kind of like channeling is the beginning, and they've got these whole other series of developmental courses. And it kind of reminds me of the Paul Solomon stuff, where he's got like his inner light consciousness and some other stuff, you know, that are these lengthy courses, multi-CD album type of things. But they seem to have more, and it seems to be more systematic and more structured and more hierarchical. So it's like they kind of tell you, you know, once you begin channeling a guide, here's kind of what you move on to next, and then it's all kind of in a series. You know, it's all supposed to kind of flow, which really means one way you could look at what Roman and Packer have done since the 80s, you know, over all these years, is they seem to have kind of established their own, they don't call it this, but their own like university of higher learning in practical spiritual development techniques, or spiritual / psychic development techniques, you know, that along the lines of the channeling, being aware of higher dimensions, accessing your higher self, all this stuff, and it's really amazing that you get into it and it's really specific. They have like specific exercises and things. So I suppose in that regard it would be along the lines of like if you got into your favorite, I don't know, like Hindu or Buddhist tradition or whatever that had its own system of meditation and visualizations and all this, but theirs has been developed from their guides that they've been channeling all these years, and in conjunction with their guides they've been developing this instructional course. So in a way it's kind of like a course direct from the beyond instead of direct from religious tradition, which I do understand that a lot of those religions, especially those Eastern religions, are probably more directly and more heavily guided by contact with the realms beyond in a more direct and concrete sense than maybe the Christian religions are and stuff, as far as when it comes to practical exercises and methods of development and stuff like that. But still, there seems to be, I don't really want, well, maybe a cut above, or maybe a cut more modern, or just more, you know, without all the flack or without all the extra stuff and trappings, and more just the straight dope, more practical or something. So yeah, I've at this point anyway, I feel like totally endorsing everything they come out with, and I've just had nothing but positive experiences. I've not only done that opening the channel book, but I've started in on this light body course. So it's like, and this is one of 6 or something, and this contains like 5 CDs, and each one I guess is about that big. Whoa! But so, and it's just been unbelievable, and I'm sure I'll get into more of that later. But so that's what I've been doing. As far as the other stuff goes, like Urantia, I'm sure I'll get back to that Urantia commentary. Maybe I'll do some more of that today, or when I get a chance. I've just been, all my free time that I've normally been devoting to these addresses and things. It has been devoted to the my meditation and channeling, for the last month or so. So, but rest assured, we'll maybe at not quite the same frequency I had been, but I'll still keep coming out with stuff periodically, or attempt to at least. And at the very least, I'll come out with a video like this every once in a while and let everybody know what's going on. So, on other fronts, I don't know, I've noticed that Matthew Lewin, he just came out with a new reading on, and it deals with the social upheaval in North Africa and all those countries, which is really an interesting reading. And another thing that I ran onto a little while back by kind of a circuitous route was Divine Cosmos. And I don't know, I guess I'll try to put a link to the relevant site and or sites in the information to this video. But Divine Cosmos is like this organization. And I think I've talked about this before a little bit. I can't really remember, but it's like this. It was started by a guy that did channeling in the, what was it, 50s or 60s or something? Well, I'm going to like completely butcher this. I'm going on like month-old memory of the last time I read up on this. But they're still going, because this one guy started the channeling and stuff, and then when he passed on, somebody else like took up the torch, and all the way along their organization is kind of fragmented and stuff. But there's always, I guess, been this core group that has one or more deep trance channelers, apparently deep trance channels that that continually channel new information. And they've got a book. Well, I'll try to find a link to that too. It's a book that seems to be kind of along the lines of The Secrets of Life by Cottrell, where it's just kind of an overview, life, the universe, and everything, portrayal of information from the channel that was dictated from top down, basically, in the deep trance state. So they've got a book like that too, and theirs deals with it seems to have about the same kind of content and approach and cosmology, but it comes as the deep trance channels, but comes at things from kind of a different angle and spends a lot of time talking about I think like emotional development and attitudes and emotions and stuff, a la Edgar Casey. And then they've got this whole section on parenting, child rearing, and stuff that, for those of us with children and that are going through the parenting process, it was really enlightening. It has, I think, a lot of good stuff in there that you may not normally think of about how to, like one thing they recommend is like expose your kids to how society works and the world works at an earlier age. So even when you have young kids, they say it's important to get them out and about and not only take them to museums and like, festivals or fairs or things like that, but also take them to like civic places, like take them to the courthouse, maybe the police station, and maybe even briefly let them look in on, I don't know, a court proceeding that's open to the public, or places where the community boards, like school board and things, are meeting, or so they can get a flavor, just get a feel for how society is kind of put together, and the government and things and organization and is all structured, which I thought was really interesting. But so they have lots of points in that book, and I'll try to get a link to that and everything. So I think what's going on there is there have been a number of deep trance channels, and actually I remember listening to a recording of a radio broadcast where they interviewed, I think it was the guy that's currently the channel for Divine Cosmos, or the main channel, or one of the channels. And maybe I'll try to dig that up as well, see if I can, because that was really interesting. And I actually listened to that like a while back, and then I stumbled on it again. So maybe somebody pointed me to this stuff again. I can't remember how I heard about it lately. But it seems like the real deal. So there do seem to be some other deep trance channels out there. For the ones I've found so far, it just seems like none of them are publishing readings like the way Edgar Cayce did. I suppose back in the day, during Edgar Cayce's lifetime, I'm not sure how accessible the readings were. Probably not at all, unless you actually went to Virginia Beach to look stuff up. So I suppose all in good time. So we have to wait like 50 years till these people like move on, and then others come in and say, oh, their stuff was valuable, and then decide to like collect it and publish it and everything. It's like, I don't know, in a way I don't think it's going to happen, because, or at least, you know, it probably will happen in some cases, but I think that for the most part we are all going to be getting so much more currently fresh channeled information personally, that it's not going to be as much about finding those channels out there and reading their stuff as it is going to be about going to your local channeling person as they continue to crop up, and or doing channeling yourself and learning how to do it yourself. I'm not sure how prevalent the deep trance channeling will be, but it seems like a pretty unanimous consensus among the various conscious trance channels, or you know, the entities are channeling. The material seems to agree overall that this is a trend that's going to continue. That this process of the conscious channeling, or conscious trance channeling, whatever, is going to be something that is going to happen more to more people more often, and it's just going to continue to unfold, and that's intentional. And so one thing I'm seeing in a lot of the readings is an admonishment to learn how to do it yourself. Like for instance, I remember in some Bashar material where people were apparently complaining about the fact that Daryl Anka was charging money for seminars and access to videos, and they were like cracking down on people that were just copying them and posting them for free on the internet and stuff. And people were complaining about that, and in the channeled, you know, there's like a response to that Daryl Anka gives himself, and then there's one where he's channeling Bashar on that topic. And in that one where Bashar's talking, the real interesting response is, yes, it's proper for, I think this was Bashar, it might have been somebody else, but anyway, it was a channeled entity, and they're saying, yeah, it's definitely proper for somebody who's doing channeling to charge you money, because if you are going to them, that was it, because the statement that people were making was that information should be free, and they came back at I think it was Bashar, and they came back at Bashar, and they're like, hey Bashar, you said all information is freely available, you know, this information is freely available for everyone, how come Daryl Anka is able to charge for it? Why is he charging for it? And then Bashar came back and said, yes, all information is free for anyone to access themselves if they want to develop the ability to, you know, if they really want to know, they should develop the ability to contact the Akashic Record, contact entities on the other side, get the information, and learn how. And he wasn't just being facetious. You know, back in the days of Edgar Cayce, I would interpret that as, you know, back when I thought Edgar Cayce was the only one and it was all about deep trance channeling, I would have taken that as being facetious, and somebody saying, you know, if you want somebody to swallow swords or something, just do it yourself, or you know, pick something that's miraculously difficult and only a few specialized people can do, and then they're telling you, oh well, if you want to be free, just do it yourself. I don't think it's like that. I don't think it was meant in that spirit. I think the whole idea is that this conscious trance channeling and other ways in which you can contact the realm beyond in the Akashic record directly and things, those things, I think the messages are going to become more and more common, more and more prevalent, easier and easier to do, and they already are a lot easier to do than you think. And that was one of the messages they kept hammering home in this opening to channel book, is that one of the things you're going to find is that it's a lot easier than you think it's going to be. And in my personal experience, I definitely found that. When the first day I did channeling, what really struck me was how familiar it seemed, because I had noticed ever since I was a teenager that when I would give talks like this, you know, where I'm talking on some relatively advanced topic or whatever, and trying to communicate some valuable information, I would seem to be giving out information I didn't necessarily have, right? You know, I'd be drawing these advanced conclusions and putting these things together and saying things, and it seemed to be this level of knowledge awareness way beyond what I normally had, just in run-of-the-mill waking life. And at the beginning, when I was a teenager, that perplexed me, because I remember when I first realized that, then the next day I went to talk to my friends about like philosophy and cosmology and whatever. It seemed like I knew nothing, and I was like paralyzed, and I couldn't say anything, and they were doing all this talking, and I got over that fairly quick. But it showed me kind of the difference between completely consciously generating speech and talking and entering into a dialogue, and then doing the same while you're tapping into the subconscious or other, you know. And it makes me wonder if I haven't all along been gaining immediate insight from like my higher self, most likely, or maybe even other entities or whatever. But at the very least, engaging in, you know, stepping back into this higher viewpoint where I could see more and see things more clearly, and seem to have a lot more grasp of things and understanding and wisdom. And it seemed to be part of this process of just talking. You know, as I talked, the stuff would just come out, and it was clearer when I engaged in the process. So when I did the channeling at first, that was really what it seemed like, which was really interesting. And it was a lot like that. In other words, some of the differences were, it's like I wasn't trying to say anything. I wasn't trying to engage in a dialogue, or I didn't have this agenda like, okay, I'm going to talk and it's going to be about this. It was more like just being in that context where, okay, I'm ready to channel, let's see what comes in, and then start to pay attention to what's going on in the mental background and the visualization, and all of a sudden these concepts and images start coming into my mind, much like when I'm talking to people, you know. And usually when I'm talking to someone, that's driven by like a question they'll ask, or however we got onto the topic to begin with. So in this case, all of a sudden those images just come in to begin with, and then it's like, oh, that's the topic. And I suppose if somebody asked me a question and I was going to do a channeling for them, then that question would kind of start the process, so it'd be even more similar to a normal conversation. But the difference being that it is like coming from another entity. You know, I do get the name of the entity and the definite impulse for them to address who they are at the beginning, and it seems to be very spontaneous and come on its own. So I'm not engaged at all, basically, in deciding what I'm going to say or what I'm going to talk about. I'm just almost passively going through that process of taking the conceptual, visual, intuitive, abstract information, imagery, whatever, that's coming through, and translating that directly to speech. And as you get that process going, it just, you know, it's the same kind of thing. You get this awareness of the problem that's being addressed or the topic, and like this spotlight moving over the topic, this light of awareness, and as you see all this stuff, all these facts about it that are relevant, you're talking about them. You know, you're translating them into words. So yeah, it's in a way it's hard to describe, but because it's in a way it's so very similar to my normal mental process, even when I'm doing something like this. But in a way, some things are different. You know, like I said, like I'm not trying, and there's more spontaneity. And what was interesting was a few times it seemed like at the beginning we were trying different types of channeling. Like we would try the thing where I would get a word or two coming through and hear the words, and I would say the words, and that seemed to be really slow and laborious, and although it did work from time to time. And it seems that I will slip into that they kind of mix together anymore, because I'll be doing the conceptual thing, but then a lot of times I'll be getting specific words and or phrases that pop into my mind before I've had a chance to say anything or think about, you know, before I've had a chance to translate anything into words and say it. And then I'll follow that phrase or whatever and say that. So it seems like I'm kind of getting conceptual information, imagery, and the intuitive wisdom and big picture, and then supplemented by direct verbal information when needed or whatever. And this is just the beginning. You know, I'm starting out in this process. I assume that's what was the easiest way for me because of the way I mentally operate or whatever. So your mileage may differ, or probably definitely will differ. And that's what it said in the book. They outlined, like, I don't know, 5 or more different types of channeling and ways it could occur, and ways people thought about it. And it almost turned out that there's as many different ways that people do it, and ways they think about it, and types of thought process they're going through while they're doing it, as there are people channeling. You know, so which shouldn't come as that great of a surprise. But one thing they definitely mention is that, and they have you go through this, you know, as you visualize yourself going to more elevated planes to contact your guide and or guides or higher self, they have you visualize this doorway, and going through this doorway, and tell you to understand, hey, this is kind of like a commitment. You know, understand that when you go through this doorway, you are taking on a lot of responsibility, because it's going to be your agreement to embark on this path of accelerated spiritual growth, and to be responsible with that. And they say things like, you know, your words will have more impact. You will be more magnetic to people, and that can work both ways. So if you're very angry and derogatory, that can have a lot more negative effect on people than it would normally. And also, if you're more positive and upbeat and more level and uplifting, that can have a greater effect on people. So in a way, there's this, they're trying to communicate to you to be more responsible. And I've definitely found that since I started channeling almost immediately. And also they say this whole abundance thing and upstep in your spiritual development and acceleration is going to occur. And it's this whole balancing act, they say, between what you can handle and can't handle. You know, so it's like you will be growing, but they tell you try not to take too much. Try not to bite off more than you can chew, and go to the point where your growth is outstepping the context that you're in. You know, because they're very clear that this process is one of you grow a little bit, and then your environment and surroundings kind of change to come in sync with that and match that. So maybe you'll be with different people. People will come in and or out of your life, or just the way you respond to things will be different, and things, and you may be adjusting things, like in terms of career, or what you do with your free time, or how you spend your time and stuff. And so they outline how if you do a lot of growth too fast internally, you'll kind of outstep your surroundings, creating all this tension, because there's going to be all these things that are going to want to change drastically all at once. And there are apparently, they outline things you can do to avoid that, and they also say that your guides, if you have a guide and you've asked for one that will be helping you through this, one of the things they do is help to pace the whole thing. You know, they apparently step down their rate of vibration, so they're not influencing you to develop and grow out of your shell or too fast or that kind of thing. They're kind of pacing it and helping you, but also I guess the onus is also on you to take certain steps to limit that and take things at baby steps and don't take more than you can handle. And if you feel like you're going too far too fast, they have things to tell you to do to kind of scale back and take your time. And interestingly, in the book, they also talk about the ups and downs of the channeling process, how it's very natural for things to ebb and flow. Like when you start out, there's like, oh yeah, it's great, there's all this good stuff happening. And then after a while, you like get disillusioned with it, start to question it. Am I really making this stuff up? Am I really channeling? Am I succeeding in connecting with somebody else on the other side? Or is it mostly just my own conscious preconceptions coloring the whole thing? And how valuable is it? And they say a lot of times people will like take some time off channeling and almost always eventually come back to it. But that's part of the normal process, to go with the ebb and flow of the thing, and that's just part of growth. And that shouldn't be too unfamiliar of a concept, because in spiritual development or our development and growth in this life, anyway, it's always like that. There seem to be these ups and downs, this ebb and flow, and things always seems to move in this upward direction, but things kind of, sometimes it seems like you take a couple steps backwards before you take like 10 steps forward, that type of thing. And if you've done any other kind of development, like learned how to play a musical instrument over like decades or things like that, then you'll be very familiar with that, where you try to have this kind of linear progression, but things really will go at their own stages, and there'll be a long time where you seem to have plateaued, and then you'll have breakthroughs punctuating things every once in a while and kind of ratchet up your ability and stuff. So it should come as no surprise that type of thing occurs. And yeah, so that's what I'm really involved in at this point, and it's a really exciting time for me. I'm really positive about it. I'm 100% confident that it is valid, that is what's happening, and that is what this book can teach you to do. And I'm sure there are other methods. I'm sure that a lot of people can just, try to sit back and start paying attention to their inner intuition, maybe meditate a little bit, do some visualization, and just attempt to contact a higher guide and ask for one. And you read these stories, there's lots of different people with different ways. Some people have started with Ouija boards or automatic writing, not that I necessarily endorse those things, simply because I hear time and again that it's very important to be focused on contacting an elevated entity and keep asking for elevated entities to come through. And if you feel like the entity is like negative or derogatory or profane or anything, to like just tell them to leave. And so there are a lot of safeguards that are necessary, and they do tell you a lot about that in this book too, because even with you're not doing the Ouija boards or automatic writing, but even with just the process you're going through, they clearly say that sure, there's a risk of you just contacting some lower spiritual entities in the astral plane that are wandering around with not that great amount of wisdom, and they're just basically malicious and stuff. And they tell you how to avoid that. They tell you how to focus on higher vibrations, how to get a sense for what a higher vibration versus a low vibration feels like before you start anything. They have lots of preliminary exercises. So there's lots of helpful things in the book you started, but as is obviously the case, a lot of people do get started doing this even without a structured method like this. But for those of you that have been looking for a structured method to learn how to channel, or are even curious about it, the book's very informative. And if you feel at all encouraged to go there or take a look at it, by all means, check it out and check out their website. I'll try to put a link. It's orinanddaben.com. I'll try to put a link to it at the end of this video. But yeah, just a fantastic group of individuals and fantastic work to get you started. So until next time, carry on.